to the Integrate This EdTech Podcast. I'm David Berner, joined by my co-host, Jeremy Mikla. And today we have a special guest with us, Alana Winnick. Alana is an educational technology leader who serves as the Educational Technology Director for Pocantico. I think I messed it up already, but
no, it's fine. Pocanico, everyone does.
Pocanico Hills CSD, and a director with Nice Skate. Alana is the author of The Generative Age, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Education, and hosts the Generative Age Podcast, exploring how generative AI is reshaping teaching, learning, and leadership. Alana is also the Future of Education Technology Conference, also known as FETC 2026 keynote speaker, presenting the future of learning, empowering every student to thrive in Orlando, Florida, taking place January 10th through the 14th. And I'll also be at that conference as well. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for Alana to join us and talk about a variety of different things, but also the keynote and the other sessions that she'll be presenting at that conference. So Alana, we're excited to chat with you, and welcome to the Integrate This Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I didn't know you were coming. You left that part out. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm doing one session. So
you're only going to one session?
No, I'll be doing one session.
I thought you meant, what are you going to do the rest of the time?
Yeah, I think I'm coming to one of yours. So.
Oh, which one?
It's one of the workshops. I can't recall, but.
And what session are you doing?
It's actually on vibe coding for people who don't know how to code.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
Like me, I do not know how to code, so that's where it all came from.
Yeah, that's great.
So to kind of kick things off, do you want to just give the listeners a little bit of your origin story, kind of the timeline of how you got to where you're at today?
I'll try to sum it up as quick as possible. My background is in elementary education. So then I went back for early childhood, and then I went back for educational technology, and then I went back for educational leadership. So I have many degrees, and I think that probably that is what led me, like, flash forward a bit, we'll backtrack to why I feel so strongly the way I do about the educational system, because as someone who figured out how to play this game of education, I became a very good student, and I have several 4.0 GPAs. But what I've really experienced as a student is that doesn't necessarily equate to success in life. So I really think, especially in a world with AI, we need to rethink what school looks like. And that's probably why I flash forward got to where I am today. But it is because of my multiple degrees and feeling like, oh, this is super easy. I figured it out. I just give the teacher what they want, get the A, move on. And I didn't really focus on my own learning and growth. But then so then I was an elementary teacher, and then I was an EdTech specialist for one district, and then I got stolen by New York State and supported 48 districts. And then during the pandemic, I got stolen by one of them, and I became their EdTech Director. But that title is a little confusing because I also manage the whole IT side as well. So infrastructure, server switches, field technicians, anything that plugs in a wall, professional development. And then my favorite part of my job, which is not my job at all, is working with students. So that's not necessarily within my job title, any interaction with students, but I think that by going into classrooms and seeing how the technology is used and hearing the student experience, it really helps me make better decisions when I'm purchasing something, when I'm implementing something. So I think that student voice is incredibly important. And I lead 3 clubs right now: Monday's TED Talk Club, Tuesday's Innovation Club, and Wednesday's AI Club. So I definitely have built a lot of relationships with students. Did I freeze? Oh, I thought I froze. I've built a lot of relationships with students, and I think that that's really maybe how I got to where I am today, because I think a lot of leaders don't interact with students pretty much ever. And I think it makes me a stronger leader. I think it makes me a stronger decision maker. I think it helps me when I'm, making purchasing decisions or scope and sequence or a new initiative. And I think that most people are not listening to students. And that's maybe why I got to where I am today.
Yeah, and so one of the things this gets emphasized a lot, and it's part of your keynote too. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit later. But do you feel like that has always been with you, and is a result of just because, as you mentioned, you started with like elementary education and things like that? Is as you've progressed through the different roles that you've had, have you always kind of just had naturally students at the center, and then applied different things to your work with them as you've gone through, or how has that worked for you?
So I got my current job officially September 1st, 2020. I was working with the district in a consulting capacity before that. And the last place I worked for New York State for 8 years. And I wasn't tied to a district, and I wasn't tied to students. So like I would go in and like, that's so funny because now I do a lot of consulting, and most people that go into consulting, it's a whole new world for them. That was actually most of my career was spent consulting with districts. So it's very natural for me. But in those 8 years, I would like when Google Drive first came out or Chromebooks, like I would go and work with the innovators, the teachers that were going to pilot the Chromebooks and pilot Google Drive and help. I would come and sprinkle some really innovative things, work with their team, get them up and running and leave. So I never really built strong relationships with students. And I think once I was hired at this district, I was like, wow, I missed this so much. And I wanted to try to engage as much as I could with students. So I think I didn't realize how much I missed it until I came back, and I knew that I had to like maximize on the fact that my office is in a building with students, and it was missing for me for 8 years.
And I think that's really important to kind of keep in focus. And, maybe it's a little bit more difficult when you're consulting, or, like David and I, both have experience in the classroom, but are neither of us in the classroom anymore. Our students are teachers.
Right.
But I mean, we're in still the education field, and
Mhm.
you can't be in education and not put students at the center. And so I
Yes.
think it then becomes a challenge for those of us that don't have a classroom every day to find ways to make sure that at least what we're doing is still putting students at the center of everything. And it's
100%.
their learning that matters the most.
I mean, that's why we all have jobs, right? We have jobs because of child students, right? Or I
Mhm.
mean, they could be 18, but um one thing that you said that made me think of it is recently one of my, I'm going to call her a teachers was trying not to use the word teacher and was saying like educator, like an art educator, a second grade educator. I'm just making up like PE educator. And we realized that like we here are educators. They are actually teachers. She thought that word was offensive. And then we really analyzed it. And I think it's like a badge of honor. Like, no, you're on the front lines. Like, you are with the actual students. You are a teacher. That is like a badge of honor. So we kind of reframed that. But like we're educators, right? And we educate people. But I feel like a classroom teacher is the one with them in the classroom. So she reframed her thought process around that. But then what I always tell people to do, and when I speak in front of leaders, is I give them a challenge, and I say that like you can lead a club. And I know it might become a union issue, like, oh, we can't pay. Like, then don't get paid. But I promise you, pick whatever you're passionate about. It could be one of my teachers does like crocheting. It could be crocheting. Another one does hiking. It could be AI. It could be robotics. Like whatever it is that you are passionate about, those kids are just as passionate about it. And then you build these relationships with them. And while you're sitting there doing something you all love to do, they tell you things that you would never learn from any observation, walkthrough, meeting. Like you find out what's actually happening and what's not happening because they tell you.
And then you see the importance with the relationship,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how much that can matter in what a student will take away from it.
Mhm.
Um, I think it was 2023 that your book, The Generative Age, came
Yeah.
out.
Mhm.
Yeah. So even a couple of years, removed from its an initial release, but still, I think gains a lot of traction. What do you think about, the material of the book made it important for why what was the spark behind it that, kind of, or what problem was it trying to solve? You know what I mean?
So I never wanted to be a podcaster or an author or a speaker. That was never in my dreams to do any of it. And what I always tell people is like, when an opportunity presents itself, just say yes. Try it. What's the worst? You don't like it? Okay, it's not for you. Don't ever do it again, right? But you don't know unless you try. So my podcast started out as a web show because I sit on the board of directors for NiceGate, which is like, we're actually an affiliate of ISTE. We're the New York affiliate of FETC, not ISTE anymore. We were ISTE, but not anymore, but FETC. So it's like the New York State version of like an FETC. And so I was like, AI came out. I'm like, we need to do something about this, right? We can't not acknowledge that this came out. So I was like, we'll just do a webinar. I didn't think I was the most qualified person to lead this because what do I know about it, right? So this webinar series started and we'd have a different guest webinar that I was running. And then I'm like, oh, if someone missed the webinar, then they kind of are not going to go back and watch a recording, right? So it evolved into a podcast. And during that time, I had interviewed like a couple people when it's transitioned into an interview style like this. And they were like, you have a podcast now. So what's next? A book. And I'm like, I'm not writing a book. But it's funny you say that because I actually do have this Google Doc. And I was working on something that was supposed to be, if you're like traveling, you see like quick guides like Italy or Greece or like little travel books that you could have with you. Like, I was just like, what does a school leader need to know about this? Like, just quick, easy, what do I need to know? And that's all it was supposed to be. And then I got 3 publishing offers in like 48 hours and I was freaking out. And I was like, I'm not writing a book. That's not what this is. And then the publisher I selected was like, no, this is a book. And then I was really originally written for school leaders. Like, this is not for school leaders. This is for everyone. And then they just kept pulling it out of me. And I think so when I was writing it, I knew that it was rapidly changing so fast. So I was so cognizant to make sure that I wasn't using, like, it was not going to be outdated. I recently reread it and I'm actually like, I'm really proud of what that was in 2023. Like, it's still good right now. Like, do I know a lot more now? Would I go back and maybe add things? But I'm still very proud of where it stands right now, like, truthfully, which is crazy because it was written that long ago and it changed. But I think for me, it's not about the AI. Like I said in the beginning with my colleges and stuff, I've always believed that education needed to change. And I think for me, it's like if we used to say if your question's Googleable, it's not a good question. It's the same thing right now. If your assignment is AIable, it probably isn't a good assignment if the child can just copy and paste it, right? So I've always felt like we really need to rethink assessment. I think a lot of kids don't perform well on standardized assessments or state tests. And I think we're doing a podcast right now. That's how people can consume knowledge. Like, alternative types of assessments and portfolios are something I've always believed in. And I think that the book, yes, it's about AI, but really what it's about is what I've always believed since I was a student, is that education needs to change and we need to rethink teaching, learning, and assessment. And I have a framework: rethink the what, the why, and the how, what we're asking our students to do, why we're asking them to do it, and how we're assessing them. Like, that's not about AI, but like, AI is just this catalyst for the change that I've always believed needed to happen. So it is about AI, but it's also like not,
Right. But I think that's what makes it very applicable today, is that its guiding principles aren't so tech tool out front and forward, right? A specific tool, because that stuff always changes. And I almost kind of liken it to what you said a little bit earlier about playing the game of school and knowing how to play the game of school in order to get the good grades, to get your teachers to notice you, like you, or write you a good recommendation to go
Right.
to a college, and I think if you were to focus on just those things, those aren't the things that are setting people up for success in life. The
Well, it
things that
does
are
not
going to
prepare you for life. It does
and it's
does
not
not.
preparing you, right? But that's, I think, at the heart of why there needs to be a change. And I like where you're going with that, where obviously assessment is flawed, the way that it's been done. Our instructional practices, if they're not student-centered, which, I think back to my own teaching, I wish I would have done more student-centered approaches to
But
a lot of
also
the learning
every student is
experiences I've
different.
provided them,
But
right?
then you also have to take into account, like, every student's different. You could have
Yes.
an ENL student in the same room that you have a student that's dyslexic, right? And every student has a different need.
But wouldn't that opens the door then for AI to come in, right? And not be a replacement for anything that a teacher is doing in their classroom, but more of a complement,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Right? Because the teacher can't meet with every single student and give every single student what they need at the same time.
Is AI going to do that? Do you think that's a misconception? Is AI is going to fix every student?
I don't think it's going to fix every student. But what I do think is that teachers don't have time to meet with every student every period of every day. And if the student is, let's say, using an AI space, we have school AI, the teacher can look at the transcript and know, like, oh, I need to pull that kid tomorrow and work on them. And it gives them a little bit more of an insight onto where each student is, to know which students need, maybe more challenging work, which students need to be pulled. And I think it just gives you more information if you use it the right way.
So, and if you're looking at, do you think that teachers need more guidance on how to actually make it more efficient? Because there's the promise of, all these things will save you a ton of time, which everybody looks at and goes, great, I need time, right? And it's supposed to open up opportunities for relationships in with students and maybe colleagues, right? The ability to actually talk to others more. What do you think is needed to create efficiency that actually works so that you can have those things in place? Because one of the things that I will typically talk about when I've done trainings is that sometimes if you don't approach these tools the right way, you actually end up sinking way more time in it than you ever intended to. So what is your thoughts just on how to approach these with efficiency so that we can maintain the relationship aspect or increase it?
Well, I think that's a really loaded question because, as you guys know, you work with teachers, and some teachers are going to get it, and other teachers need a lot more support, right? Or scared of it, or resistant, or hesitant. So I like to really incorporate as much AI into professional development as I can so they can experience it, because if they are not in the learner seat and understanding what's possible and why we would ever want to do this, I just don't think some of them are going to ever get it. So I think they need to experience it before they're open-minded to even try it. And then I think for some of them, we just need to make it for them and then go in their classroom and do it with them and then show them, oh, look, this is what, let's debrief this together. So I think I could have a teacher that just takes it and flies with it and owns it, and then we can have them showcase their work. But some of the teachers are just never going to get there unless you chip away a little bit and a little bit and a little bit.
Alana, one of the things that I listen to you talk about is how you constantly, in all of the different roles that you've had and the different hats that you've worn, have really sought ways to find yourself an opportunity to be in front of students, right? Because you value that idea of listening to students and understanding where they're coming from to help them get to where they're going, right? Why is it so important, do you think, as educators, that we put ourselves or give ourselves the opportunities for students to innovate, to be at the center of their own learning, and to really provide the spark of their own voice into their learning process?
Well, first of all, students are the future, right? Like, we are one day gonna not be working anymore. They're gonna be in the workforce. They're gonna be controlling the world, right? Like, it's pretty cool because there's a statistic, and I think it's like 3.4% of the workforce is teachers, but we educate 100% of the population. And I really just think that stood out to me because, like, we can make change. Like, we can actually make change in the world, in the country, just by empowering students, right? And that's why it matters, because, like, think about yourself. If you felt as empowered as you are right now when you were a student, imagine how much more you could have accomplished. Imagine where you could have been right now today if you had started this back when you were in elementary school.
I've always thought that kids come to school, they're naturally curious. Pre-K, kindergarten,
yeah,
right? And then they get into, and I'm not trying to harp on elementary teachers because I've been in many elementary buildings, and when you walk through and you're being passed by a line of kids that have all been taught, they call them line basics in a couple of the schools that I were in, where to me, we're making kids for assembly line workforces, right? At that point,
and that's how
which is not the economy that we have anymore.
No.
So what kind of a future are we preparing for if we're beating that curiosity out of them? And then to try to get that back from them, even as they are maturing and they're understanding more and more about the world that they live in, but yet we're not giving them kind of the opportunity to be able to choose their own paths of learning and demonstrating their knowledge and their skills as they go along.
No, we're not. They all have to do the same assessment, and it's usually a worksheet or an essay.
So how can we then turn over that control so that students can have more of that voice and that innovation?
So I think, like, you have to allow for, like, student agency. It's more of like project-based learning or inquiry-based learning. Like, one style of school that does this well is, like, let's say Montessori. Like, they're very good about, they don't group students by age. They don't group, like, they're not all learning the same thing, right? Or like a private school, right? I think when you're stuck in a public school, that's how you normally get your funding, and you have to do certain things. But there's models out there that are working, and we just don't do that in public school. But I think even if, like, here's an example, and it's just tweaking an assignment a little bit. In my eighth grade social studies class in my district, they were studying, like, I think, like, Reconstruction. And they gave the students, first of all, the option on what their lens was. Did they think it was successful, or did they think it was a failure? So they're all doing the same research, right? And then they just get to choose their stance. But then they also get to choose, do I want to make, and we called it like a visual essay, like a children's book? Do you want to make a video? And they got to choose the end product as well. And it was interesting because a lot of kids thought that they were going to take the easy way out and do a children's book. And it was actually harder because they had to explain it to, like, essentially a 5-year-old. And that's like one way to take a topic that's Reconstruction and do the research and write the essay. You're still sort of doing that. You're just giving them a little bit of choice. So I use that example to show that you could just tweak an assignment just a little bit, where they have their own opinion on the topic, but then they also have their own choice of how they're demonstrating their knowledge.
So I think, to me, when I think of like project-based learning or experiences where you're offering students more choice, either in the direction that their project is going to take or the final product of what that happens to be. And I think that can be pretty intimidating, to give up some of that control from the teacher's perspective, because you still want to make sure that the students are accountable to the standards that you're and objectives that you have for your class, right? But and here again is where I think there's a window for AI to come into the picture to help that teacher, right?
Yeah.
How could a teacher utilize generative AI to help them get over that barrier, that perceived barrier that they have to giving up some of the control?
Mm-hmm. So I've built a whole community in my district where we really empower everyone to be leaders, students and teachers to become leaders. And we really embrace failure. So like first attempt in learning. But students do lead things. So we have pop-up events once a month, and it's usually tied to like whatever the month is, like Women's History Month, or this month is computer science week. So whatever like we're celebrating, and then we tie a technology component, and we have one pop-up event for the older students, and then we have one for the really, really young students. And the older students are the ones that lead it for the younger students. And those students get to learn all about like different technology tools like Book Creator or Canva or something like that. And we found that they actually now, like kindergarten and first grade classrooms, are using Book Creator a lot. And it's because the older students actually taught the younger students and the teachers, right? I didn't teach the teachers. The teachers learned from the students using it. And they're like, wow, this is really awesome. Let's use it in the classroom. Another thing was my students found VR headsets in the library, and they're like, wait, we have VR headsets. Why are we not using these VR headsets? And so I was like, let's figure it out. So we gave them directions. The directions were wrong. They rewrote the directions, made Canva posters, invited the teachers in, and taught the teachers how to use VR headsets. So now if you have one of those kids in your class, they can just run the whole experience for you. So they're working with their French teacher on, they're going to go to a museum to look at a piece of art to then write about it in French. They're working with their social studies teacher. They're studying Mexico, I think, and they're going to go take a field trip to Mexico. So I think it's just about providing opportunities for students to be leaders and then allowing teachers to see the students in a new light. And I think it might take a few times to for that to happen, but you're going to get your students who are really into it, and you just have to invest time in them. And then as the teachers learn that the students actually have a lot to teach them, then they're very open-minded to it. But it does take, a little bit of time to build that culture.
And one thing to touch on is that when you're doing those projects where you're making innovation possible, one of the things is creating an area or an environment where there's safety and trust. So can you talk a little bit about what trust conditions should be in place before schools start to scale some of those things to allow for innovation? A lot of times with that, it'll come where there's new tech that students might be using. And I know you're in New York, but and I'm not sure what's there, but like Minnesota, we have the Minnesota Data Privacy
Act. We have very strict data privacy laws as well.
Yeah. So as far as that, when you have teachers getting into certain things, what kind of conditions do you feel like have to be met to allow for some of those things to take place?
Well, the data privacy thing is very important. So I am the data privacy officer for my district as well. And if something so we have an approved list, and if something's not on the approved list, then you have to ask before you would use it, right? So that's just straight up. If it's not on the list, don't use it unless, you talk to me and I can try to get it on the approved list. But the other condition would be, okay, it's approved, it's safe, it's secure. We don't ever want a teacher to feel like they're going to get in trouble for something failing. Like, we want to celebrate them trying, whether it was successful or it was not. We're going to celebrate that. Like, the whole administration kind of has to be on board with that, because they need to feel safe with their principal or the director of student support services, to know, and my superintendent, of course, he's super supportive, but we want them to try new things. And I think it's a really great learning opportunity for the students, and just, they're scared sometimes just to say, I'm trying this for the first time. It might not work out the way that we wanted to, but we're gonna try it. And if it doesn't, let's see if we can figure it out together. And I think that just creating an environment where we're all learning together and we're all trying new things and we're celebrating effort and success and embracing like learning opportunities, right? We don't call them failures, they're learning opportunities. That's just the type of culture you have to spend a lot of time building culture.
And have you seen too where has that helped reduce the anxiety of some teachers? Like where?
Yeah, because I think sometimes they think like, oh, I'm going to get observed and then I'm going to get a bad observation. Like, no, we're so happy that you tried that. We're just so happy you tried that for your students.
Yeah. So just like encouraging teachers to try something new, even if it falls flat on its face, at least you're still within the spirit of innovation, right? It's still trying to allow students opportunities despite failures that might come, right?
Yeah. We say fail equals first attempt in learning. That's what it stands for, right? As long as you learned from that, as long as you said like, oh, I would do it this way next time, or I would recommend to the next teacher, don't do that because of this. Like, you learned something, right?
Yeah. And then I want to touch on one other piece of this too, that has more to do with inclusion. Are there tools that you think are currently, maybe you currently have them in use, or you've heard about that maybe your own school doesn't use, but technology tools or platforms that genuinely remove barriers for students? So a couple examples would be like multilingual family communication, dyslexia support, things like that. Have you seen, because one thing too, obviously if we go back to what you were saying about every student being different, and feel free to tie AI into this if it makes sense, but the ability to remove some of those barriers, what technology have you seen that does that genuinely?
I actually have an entire session at FETC called Breaking Barriers. There's two. One is called Building Bridges. And I do have one that's called, it has the word breaking, Building Bridges. And it's about connecting with multilingual learners and their families. So we have a very large ENL, English as a New Language. It's not necessarily the student population. It's more, we do have them. We have a lot of them. Then they graduate out of the program, right? But their parents don't graduate out of the program. So that is my focus, is connecting with non-English speaking families whose children might not be enrolled in the ENL program anymore because they graduated out of it. So we actually have an entire session on building bridges, and that's with me, my director of student support services, a classroom teacher, and our ENL educator, and an ENL student, and how we do that. So, we have like a laundry list of ways to do that. So we use Parent Square, and that's how we do mass communication and two-way communication. So every family can receive the content in their native language. And we make sure we put everything in there, from registering for clubs to just a newsletter or a post from the teacher. Pretty much every EdTech tool, like AI is a really big one, right? The students can receive it in their language, or if we're talking about accessibility, they can challenge themselves or get it simplified. So AI really is helpful for both the learning differences as well as the multilingual learners. Other tools we use that have accessibility, they're in everything. Like, we are Microsoft, so we have Immersive Reader. In Canva and Book Creator, there's translation tools and accessibility tools. We have a Pocket Talk device where we have a new student that just moved here from Pakistan and speaks Urdu, and no one speaks Urdu, right? We can't communicate with them. So there's a little Pocket Talk that the child can walk around with and speak in Urdu, and it translates in English, and then you press another button and the next person speaks in English and it translates. And we do that when families come in as well. We noticed that we weren't having a very large turnout for like things like back to school night and things like that. So Microsoft District, we have live translation on the PowerPoints for the families. So we've seen an increase of families coming into the district because they weren't coming, because why would they come? They can't even understand what we're saying, right? And so we have audio enhancement, which are microphones that the teachers wear around their neck, and there's speakers in the ceiling. I just got a delivery. I haven't even opened the box for this. It's called a bridge. And the student can put headphones in, and everything that the teacher's saying in the microphone is translated in their ear. So like that's game changing too. So I feel like the accessibility, it's just built in everywhere. Another tool that I know is great for, like you mentioned, dyslexia is Kami. That's a really great tool for students with learning differences. I don't know. I feel like they all, like, you could, I mean, some are better than others, but it's pretty much in everything now.
And this is one area that I get really excited about, where as far as, you know, the possibilities that are coming, I still feel that, especially when I think of like the multilingual, the translation features and things like that, that AI is definitely going to help accelerate some of the possibilities of some of those live translation things, like you were talking about, that one device. And I know
now your
Apple
AirPods could just translate in your ear.
Yeah, and I've done some experimenting with them, and it's not as live as I would like it to be. And then I was reading, just Google is also having updates to their Google Translate app on their devices as well. But I just see that as just a great place to go, and definitely, you know, making that learning much more inclusive and accessible is so important.
Yeah.
So we talk a little bit about accessibility and inclusion part of it here, right? But AI can, or even other technologies can also be, I think there's some great tools out there that can really help students be able to express themselves, whether it's through, you know, some sort of a reflection that they're doing, audio, video, or even whether it's something like maybe they can use to help them build skills or to deepen their thinking. Have you seen any success stories, you think, of how an emerging technology is allowing students more of that expression in what their learning is?
I think that AI image generation has really been a game changer in the creative space, because students sometimes have a very clear vision in their head, and it's very difficult for them to get that vision out for someone else to be able to receive it. And I think that if they prompt the right way, they can bring their visions to life. Like, we have little third graders that do TED Talks, and there's, you know, a lot of writing that goes in there, and the AI helps them as a tool to make them become a better writer. The AI helps them create images that help the audience visually see what they're saying. The AI can help give them feedback on their speaking to help for them to become a better speaker. So AI just becomes a tool in that instance to help bring their creativity to the next level. But I do think that image generation, I think it's amazing. And I think the next level of it will be, once it's good enough, is like the video creation side of it, because you could create essentially like a movie of your essay or report. You can turn it into a very engaging video without really needing to know that much editing skills, right?
So does it take away from some of the originality or the creativity? You know, I'm thinking about, you know, like, turn your essay into a movie. That's great, you know, but
No,
is there
I'm not
still a
saying
space?
It depends
there's
how you're
those,
doing
oh,
it.
I'm
You're
sorry.
just saying take this essay and turn it into a movie. That's not. So it's funny because in AI club
Yeah.
last week, I have their third and fourth graders. So I told them they were using Canva because every week we learn something new, that they were going to make a holiday card for their family, and we had to use all the like Canva magic tools, like magic media,
Mhm.
creating an image, removing the background, like the magic background remover. We learned how that was AI. We learned about the magic expand. If the picture didn't fill the whole screen, they could, like, all these little AI elements in there. And then we had a conversation. Like, if you just typed in Christmas or snowman, like, is that even your work? I mean, really. So the prompt is your work. The output is not your work. The prompt is your work, right? And then we had a whole conversation like about is the final product, is that your intellectual property? Is that your creative work? Like an artist spends a very long time, whatever their medium is, working on this piece of art. If you just typed in Christmas card or Christmas, is that your work? The answer is no, it's not your work. But if you spent all this time putting into the prompting and giving the direction for the creative output and the layering and all these other things, so I think that like I always say this, you cannot assess the end product anymore. AI could do that for you. You need to assess the learning process. The student might need to write a reflection of how they got to that end product. And I think that process is more important than the end product.
I think that's perfectly said. I think if you're focusing on it as it being an expression of your thinking or your creativity, why shouldn't you feel ownership in that in that product, right? But I agree with you. I think it is that process that we need to be looking at, and the product is something to celebrate, right?
Huh.
It's an achievement, and it needs to be recognized as such. But really, where did all of the triumph come from, right? It's from overcoming whatever struggles that you were facing in that process, right? That makes that end product feel so good.
Right.
And if AI can, I think, help get you to that point, why can't we do that?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
So I think, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, like, it's interesting too, just in the sense of that's why I think like prompting is so important, because that is part of the process now, and really helping teachers understand when they're using it or when students are using it, the end product is going to be the result of how good your initial prompt is, and then also iterating from that afterwards to get to where you actually to coax the AI into giving you what you want as the end product. And I always kind of tell them too, like, you don't ever have to be satisfied. Like, you get to say when it's done, right? With whatever it creates.
Right.
So I like what you said there a lot, just because it's the prompting is now part of something that you can be assessing as well.
For sure. Yeah. Like, but I also think a reflection that goes along with it is great too. Like asking them, how did you use it? How do you think it helped you? Tell me about your learning process. Tell me about how this product was made. Because like, I'll pose it to you. Like you're presenting on vibe coding. Like, do you think that coding is necessary anymore? It's kind of the same question, right? Like, I think that some coders are needed because when the vibe coding doesn't know how to do it, we need someone who actually knows what they're doing to go in and fix it, right? But does that mean we shouldn't teach coding anymore? Like, no, I don't think so, because I think coding teaches you like how to think and problem solve and get stuck and unstuck, and it's like computational thing. It's like very important to learn that way of thinking because you could apply it to like anything else in your life. So I do think that it's similar, right? Like, do you need to edit videos? Like, maybe when the students are our age, maybe they're not editing videos the way that we're editing podcast audio or videos. They probably won't be, but that's fine. They're just going to be able to get to the end product a little quicker as long as the creative direction and design is coming from their human brain.
Yeah. And then, so can we talk a little bit just about a piece of that? Like one of the things that it has come up a lot recently is the concept of AI literacy. And this would be for both students and if we're working with educators,
Mm-hmm.
there are some foundational things that they need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And like we spoke with Amanda Bickerstaff, AI for Education, and they've done some great work with some of their frameworks and AI literacy kind of being, safe, ethical, and effective use is what they talk about, right, with that organization. And so if you're looking at, like, if you're to work with a district, let's say that you have 90 minutes for an AI literacy kickoff to help their teachers wrap their heads around what does safe, ethical, and effective use look like. If you have 90 minutes, what do you think a teacher should be able to walk away with? Just kind of baseline that every teacher should be able to walk away with from that 90-minute session. How would you approach that?
I mean, what I hope that, 90 minutes is a short amount of time, right? What I try to instill in the users that I get to see all the time, and I know that that's not 90 minutes, but I want them to understand how AI models are trained, so they understand. Like, so I tell every AI user, this is my rules. You have two jobs. You are a detective, and you're on the lookout for bias and misinformation, which are both incredibly important. And your second job is to be a DJ and remix it with your own thoughts, your own ideas, and your own voice. Those are my two jobs. If you can walk out after that 90-minute session and understand those two rules, I think I did a good job, right? Yes, there's a lot to do with like good prompting and all of that, but I think to use it ethically, you need to understand that there is bias, there is misinformation. Everything it tells you is not true. You need to fact check it, and you cannot copy it word for word, and you cannot trust it word for word. And you need to, as my students say, like mash it together and be a DJ and remix it. So that would be my goal for a 90-minute session.
I like that a lot because I haven't heard that put that way yet, like the remixing part, but that's a really good way to phrase it because that's what you're doing. Like you get the initial output and then you're like, okay, what do we need to mix around or change?
Yeah.
What's good, what's bad, all those
A
things.
DJ would take like little bits of this beats from these songs and this song, and then they like make their own like little remix and they mash up like a bunch of different songs, right? So where does DJs? Basically.
Which that's synthesis. That's a higher level thinking skill, to be able to do that.
Yeah. But like, and then the other thing that bothers me is like, I tell a teacher, like, would you do it? Would you use it? And then why can't a student do it? And then what bothers me even more is when I tell that the teachers use AI to help them grade the work. I'm like, can you just stop? Because just if you are going to use AI to grade the kids' work, then just teach the kid how to use the AI to give themselves feedback on it, because they're going to need to know how to do that. So have an AI, put the rubric in, put the assignment in, put your work in, get the feedback. That's what you're doing. You're just wasting your time doing it. Just teach the student how to do. And I have elementary school students that do that. So yeah, that just bothers me a little.
So on that, one more question, and this would have to do more with, this kind of fits to that because it gets into like expectations of use and what's acceptable, what's not. That's a really big question right now, especially for like districts in our region, because we have many that are trying to start creating AI guidelines for their districts. We have some that have, but if you're talking to a leader at a school that has not set up any clear expectations, what is a great starting point for a superintendent that wants to start that process, but wants to have it be like where you can allow for nuance or in the way that a teacher approaches AI or with their assessments or anything like that, and trying to set some guardrails in place, but not like fear-based type of messaging, like where they're it's all about like the policies and the rules and all this type of stuff. how can you still set expectations as a leader that still encourages your staff to utilize these tools in interesting ways?
So I actually don't have an AI policy or guidelines in my own district. I don't personally believe that you really need them. I definitely don't believe in a policy. I think policies, if you are a district leader, you know they're very, very difficult to get approved by your Board of Education. And then if you want to change them, it's nearly impossible. So I would never, ever, ever make an AI policy, ever. Unless, my superintendent or my board forced me to do it. And then, of course, I would very gladly put a smile on my face and do that. But I do think there is a difference between guidelines. I think, first of all, what is your position, right? As a leader, telling your staff, what is your position? Where do you stand? As a teacher, to tell your students, where do you stand? I think that there's such a gray area. I really hate that stoplight, that red, yellow, green. I just think, okay, green is yes, you can use it. Like, how much? Okay, red is no, we get that. Yellow, maybe. Like, maybe you could. What does that even mean? I don't know. So I think there's just so much area for gray. I've seen it done really well. I was working with Washington State government. They have AI guidelines, and I think that theirs are pretty good. On the top corner, it says like HI for human intelligence, then an AI, then an HI. So it starts with your human brain, then AI, then ends with your human brain. And then they have 5 steps, and I like that better than the 3. But I think for me, what I did was I updated my responsible use agreement. And we have a very big PBIS, positive behavior-based intervention services initiative in my district, and we really focus on the positive. So I took and I changed it. This is another word, acceptable. What's acceptable use versus responsible use? Like, the word responsible use, I think, is much stronger than this is what's acceptable. So rename it to responsible, right? But then when I went back, I rewrote it through a positive lens. Like, what do we want you to do? Not what do we not want you to do? Because Richard Collada said this, and it just stuck in my head. If you pull up any of those guidelines or policies, it's like a laundry list of like, no, don't, instead of like what we want you to do. So when I wrote it, I actually only added one thing into my responsible use agreement, and it was to submit work the category was academic integrity. So I added that in, academic integrity, handing in, like, submitting work that's reflective of your own thoughts, your own ideas, like crediting sources and all the things of academic integrity, because really that's what AI use is just, it's the same thing, right? You're just copying from Google, you're copying from a source online, you're just copying from AI. It's just about academic integrity, right? And then you get to the root cause, like, why did the student do that? Oh, it's probably, and there's a laundry list of reasons. Like, I'm sure that both of you in one point in your student career cheated on something. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but like, there's various reasons. Like, one, you didn't understand and you just wanted to get it done. Another reason might be you didn't have time. Another reason might be that you just want to get a good grade. Like, there's a long, like, we need to address those reasons of why kids cheat. Then going back to your real question. So the way that I do it is I think that it's on an assignment by assignment basis. I think it becomes very confusing for a kid that's in one class and this teacher says this is okay, and they go directly across the hall to a different class, and what was acceptable across the hall is not acceptable here. And then within this one class, what was acceptable today is different than what's acceptable tomorrow. So just being very specific, like assignment by assignment guidelines, what is acceptable. That's why I don't really think guidelines work, because the only guideline should be what's allowed today in this class on this assignment. And if you take an assignment, AI use might be acceptable in like the brainstorming process, and very differently what's acceptable in the editing process. And that's within the same assignment, right? So how could you possibly have guidelines that aren't just assignment by assignment, day by day, right?
So do you think a more like categorical approach would be preferred? Like there's a school here, Bloomington Public Schools, that does more of a categorical approach where they've got 5 core areas, like one of them is writing, and then there would be within that, potential AI uses, and then there might be like they would put like a green check mark or a red X for specific things in there.
I mean, maybe. I think it could. But I think you need to say, okay, for the brainstorming portion of this writing assignment, this is what is acceptable. When you're in the revision part of this assignment, this is what is acceptable. Like, you need to tell them, or they don't know, and then they're breaking a rule that they don't even know they're breaking.
Sure. And they have
it's about transparency at that point then, right? And just two-way transparency.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about theirs that they do is they put it directly on the assignments. So it's like it's an icon that students see. So if they get an assignment, it's like, oh, this is we know by the icon, that color, like this is acceptable and this isn't, by that coding essentially, like where they've indicated that, which I think is good.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I just think you need to be transparent. Otherwise, they don't know.
So Alana, like by the time that this airs, which will be the first week of January, right? You're going to be keynoting at the FETC conference with the keynote. You know, I'm not trying to make you nervous or anything, right? The future of learning, empowering every student to thrive. So can you maybe give people a little bit of a foreshadow of what to expect, or in my case, because I'm not going to be there and I know David is,
so
yeah, I'm gonna have serious FOMO going on, right? So what am I going to be missing? Like that should make me want to like get on the next plane and fly down.
I will say that I have a lot of tricks up my sleeve. I have some surprises that I'm not going to announce. So perfect. I can't.
You got to build that anticipation here.
Yeah. No, first of all, this is surreal. I can't even, it's a really big conference, right? It's really big. I'm still not prepared yet. It's funny. My graphic designer just fell off the face of the earth and he was supposed to design my slides. So I guess I'm going to be using AI and doing that myself on my 2 weeks off. But I've mapped out the talk and now I just need to like do my own graphic design and get it down. I will get there by then. I have 4 weeks and it will be done. Okay. So literally the title really says it all, empowering every student to thrive. And I think we talked a lot about that on this call. Like every single student has a unique need, right? You have your multilingual learner, you have your dyslexic student, every student has their own learning difference, right? And how do we tap into each student? How do we, thinking of the theme, which is game changers, like level up each student? How do we unlock their full potential, right? Because in the work that I do, it's really about getting to know each student and really helping that student level up and helping them unlock their full potential so that when they're our age, they're going to thrive, right? Because we don't want when they're our age for them to come back and be like, guess what I got on my SATs, right? Like that's not what you want for your student. You want them to tell you about all the great things that they accomplished in their life and because you supported them to get there. So I think it's just about helping every student thrive, literally.
And
that's great.
Yeah. Before we get into the lightning round questions, could you talk a little bit too about what you have going on the rest of the conference? Because you do have a number of different sessions and workshops.
I do.
And I'm pretty sure I figured out which one I'll be at. Which I
one?
think it's gonna be the.
Is it on Sunday or Wednesday?
It's the Generative Age AI Symposium, I think.
Oh, that one's canceled, just letting you know.
Okay, I won't be at that one,
actually. You will not be at that one because, my whole schedule changed since you probably looked at it because you saw how many things I had. So I'm bringing a whole team and different people are coming different days and leaving different days. So I had to rearrange the whole schedule based on everyone's travel schedule. Gotcha. But this is my working schedule. That's how many sessions I'm involved in. Just visually, so you could see that.
I think I did also mark the revolutionizing AI PD as well. So
okay, yeah, I am doing one on, I mentioned, building bridges, connecting with multilingual learners and their families, doing one on Beyond the Band because I have a very big digital wellness initiative. I'm on my second year of that. One on AI in the elementary classroom where I'll have actual elementary students leading that one. So that's going to be super fun. I have one that's rethinking school from students' perspective. I have one called Writing Reimagined, and it's taking like persuasive essays and turning them into TED Talks and taking biographies and turning them into podcasts. And when you ask students how they feel about writing, they hate it. But when you reimagine what the writing looks like, they actually love it and they don't realize they're writing. So it's a whole session on that. And then I have a couple tables on Sunday, and I have the AI PD workshop on Wednesday, which you mentioned, and I have one with Tim Needles on Sunday about STEAM power and like the A in the arts and the STEAM. So lots going. I have a lot going on, and I have a really great team. And my superintendent's doing a session on our physical security because you can't do innovative things unless you feel safe and secure. So we do have a lot around that. So he'll be presenting that. I have a student that I can't be in two places at once, but one is doing, she's dyslexic, and she's talking about what it's like to be a dyslexic student and how you could support her. So just lots going on.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll look forward to hopefully making it to one of the sessions and being there. And
I will try to live vicariously through what David tells me about it.
I will send videos and pictures. All right. Well, that kind of brings us to our lightning round. So we'll give you these quick hit questions, and you can give, one-word responses if you want, or if you want to go a little bit further with something, feel free to take it away. But Jeremy, I think you're going to kick us off with this, right?
Yeah. So based on everything that you've said and your super busy conference schedule, what's one small joy that you're going to try to seek out in the midst of all the chaos?
I mean, I think for me, when I go to conferences, when I look back, like what makes me the happiest is just connecting with other people, like seeing people that you haven't seen in so long, getting so excited to see them, or connecting with someone new. I think, right, we could do this all we want virtually, but I think being at a conference, the thing that's so amazing is being physically with human beings. And that's my joy when I go to conferences.
Yeah. I usually like seeing Jeremy in person more than virtual. And we live in different parts of the state.
I was going to say, how far are you guys?
About 3 hours.
Oh, we're a few hours apart. Yeah.
So we were talking about this before we went live, but this is the second question. What's at least one famous person that lives near you? Because you named a couple.
Yeah. So there's a couple. So Hugh Jackman lives near me. Sarah Jessica Parker lives near me. Not anymore, but Taylor Swift lived near me. And if you're Swiftie, you've probably heard the song Cornelia Street. Cornelia Street is right near me. So that's for all the Swifties out there. Kenan Thompson. I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot of people. I live in New York City, so it's like pretty normal.
That's cool. I can't think of one famous person around me. Maybe David. Maybe that's the closest one.
Yeah.
Okay. How about what's one tool or app? It could be AI, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, that you can't live without in your daily workflow.
I mean, I know that it's just the obvious, but it is AI. Like I could not live without ChatGPT. That's like my go-to. I just feel like I've trained it so well that it knows me, it knows my voice, it knows my workflows. I have different like custom GPTs for different things. Like I do so many random things that it just like gets me. So I couldn't live without it, especially. Yeah, I couldn't live. I mean, now that we've experienced, I guess I could live without it, right? We had life before it, but it's just, yeah, I love it.
It does. It completely understands you in ways that are reassuring. Not the scary kind of ways, but the reassuring kind of ways.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation. One of my students, we ran her TED Talk that she's working on through an AI, and she said it was mean to her. And I said, what do you mean it was mean to you? Was it actually mean, or was just information that you didn't want to hear because it was constructive? Because a lot of times we talked about it, like AI is agreeable, right? And that's another thing, you need to teach in that 90-minute session, that it doesn't need to be agreeable. You can tell it, I want to improve. Help give me the difficult feedback to make it better. And some people don't like to receive that, right? They just like the agreeable AI that's feeding into their ego. But that constructive partner, that's what's right. Like, you don't have a constructive partner with you all day, every day, to bounce any idea off of. And I think that for me, that's why it's so important, because I could say, like, is the tone okay in this? Because it might be a sensitive email, or am I missing anything? Is there anything I'm forgetting? And I just think using it to push back on you is what helps me.
Yeah, I would second that. It's very helpful. All right, so for this next one, you unfortunately cannot choose the Integrate This EdTech podcast, but what is a book, a podcast, or a newsletter that you're currently obsessed with right now?
So podcast, I'd say my favorite podcast is Hard Fork. If you haven't listened to it and you like AI, it's one of my favorites. It's a New York Times podcast, and it's about like technology and AI, and I really love it. It's once a week, and I listen to every episode. Also, like, really into like science and longevity, and I listen to a lot of like dorky science things. And as far as books, I feel like I commute out of the city every day, so I'm listening to a lot of audio, like podcasts or audiobooks or things like that, and that's where I get most of my nonfiction content. So when I'm picking up an actual book, I prefer to read a paper fiction thriller book, because I just don't want to look at a device. I want to put my devices away. I want to get immersed into a completely different world. I love the thriller books because they keep your mind like thinking. And yeah, and it's weird because in my world, I don't have paper anywhere except for when I read books.
Cool. And last one here before we let you go. If you're going to be giving your big keynote here, just imagining you visualize the space, the audience and stuff, and then they cue the music. What's the walk-up song that you want them to play to really get you and the audience just pumped and ready to go?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. If they told me that, I would probably have to ask AI for ideas, honestly. I don't know.
That's
I feel
fair.
like it would probably have to be on theme, right? It would have to be on theme for the conference and for the talk. So it wouldn't be like necessarily what I would want to like amp me up. It would probably have to also set the tone for the audience and for what's about to happen. But I was thinking about like the first words that are going to come out of my mouth. Like, what are those first words? Because those words are important, right? So it's kind of like the song. Like, that is what is going to hook people. So I think I would have to ask AI for help.
That's right. You get like 5 different options from AI, and then select your
Or
song
hate
choice.
all of them and ask for more.
Yeah, exactly.
See, that's not the direction I was going for.
Right. You don't have to be satisfied with what it gives you. So,
Nope.
Well, we really appreciate your time and joining us for the podcast. And, listeners can, if you do want to just mention where they can kind of check out some of your content and where they would reach you or access your book, things like that. And then also, is there anything else you have coming up besides FETC that you want to highlight?
I mean, that is the biggest thing for me. But something we didn't really talk about at all was my organization, Students for Innovation. So what I do with my own students at my own district is really great, and we just want all students everywhere to have that. So I have my innovation club at my school, and other schools can start innovation clubs at their schools as well, and have this community where we can support each other. But even if you're not starting any type of club or anything like that, we do have a student-led virtual summit where students advocate their student speakers for things that they believe should be in the classroom. Our farthest student was from India last year, talking about game-based learning. I had a student in New Jersey talk about financial literacy. Of course, we had AI, coding, things like that. So we are going to be hosting our next summit in April. So number one, if you have any student speakers that you know of, we're looking for speakers, and they could just go to studentsforinnovation.org and apply to speak. And also, last year's summit is recorded. You're welcome to watch it and sign up for this year's. So that's just something else I do. And then everything's linked on my website, alanawinnick.com. The Students for Innovation, my book, The Generative Age, my podcast, The Generative Age, all of that is linked under alanawinnick.com. I'm on every single social media platform at Alana Winnick. I'd say I'm the most active on LinkedIn, and I'm starting to be more active on Instagram. I'm trying to post more stories and stuff. So LinkedIn and Instagram, I'd say, are my top two. And if you want to reach me, you can DM me on those, or just go to my website and fill out my contact form.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to include all the links and everything in the show description on YouTube and then on the podcast sites as well. So folks that are listening, you can access Alana's work through the show notes. So Alana, thanks again for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.